Okay, we're on Ois Gimel on Daf Chaf. Now, in mitzvahs, it says, "Behold, I place before you, or I command you this day, al libavecha. Hine anechi mitzavcha hayom al libavecha." Now, what does this mean? That we have to draw it down to our hearts. That Hashem responds to us as we are to Him. Kamayim apanim. That through mitzvahs, which is the fulfillment of Hashem's ratzon, like we say, Asher kedishon b'mitzvaysav, that we draw down onto the person, that this arouses the ratzon of the nefesh, that it should be for Hashem, again, in that automatic reflective way. Kamayim alpanim. This is what Pirkei Avos means when it says, make His will your will, in order that his will should be your will, meaning that when we draw down the ratzon of Hashem, which are mitzvahs, so that our ratzon should be a ratzon for Hashem. This is also what Shlomo HaMelech writes in Mishlei, that a candle is a mitzvah. That is, that from the mitzvahs we draw down a nair or a light into the nefesh. This is an insight into the ratzon and the ava that's contained within the heart. Now, since we have a rule that mitzvahs require a form of shmirah, we have to be cautious about them. That is, that the candle that is drawn down, not like Avram, who had Yishmael who came from him, and an Avera can eradicate a mitzvah, like it says in the Gemara in Saita. That is, that it can eradicate that light and it can crush that light of love, but it cannot eradicate the essence of the mitzvah, chas v'shalom. It cannot say that the mitzvah is not still a mitzvah that the person did and is still an impact on his life. Because if a person says that I have half mitzvahs and half avedas, he's still going to Olam Haba. So obviously his avedas did not eradicate his mitzvahs. What does it mean? It means that his avedas will have to have the consequence, but it does not forfeit chas v'sholem the mitzvahs. The idea is that it can squash the candle and the light that is from the mitzvahs, but not the mitzvah itself. So regarding this, it says mitzvahs of tishmeiru, you should guard them, so that they should not be forfeit. That is, through obeying the voice, v'kei tishmo, which is the call of Torah. Because the Avera is potential to eradicate the mitzvah, but not eradicate Torah. Why? That even though the mitzvah is the radiance of the will of Hashem, it's come down here into this physical world, and it's become contained within a physical keli. And therefore, there is the possibility for zelu mazeh, for opposition. That just like when a person fulfills a mitzvah, he is upholding the ratzon of Hashem, so too, if a person does an Avera, he is in violation of the ratzon of Hashem. And that's why an Avera can eradicate the glory, the glamour, the beauty of the mitzvah. But Torah, which preceded creation and comes from the level of Chachma and radiates in the Ner mitzvah, like it says, Ki Ner mitzvah and Torah is that the Torah is a light for the candle itself. Because the source of Torah and its root is to be elevated above. It's rooted in the level of the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim that are drawn down during the month of Elul, which is a Zman and Nes Ratzon L'mayla. And every year it draws down these Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim through Torah. Because the source of Torah, the 613 mitzvahs of Torah and the Zion mitzvahs that Rabbanan gives you a total of 620. The 620 pillars of light, the source of Rachmanis and forgiveness, where Hashem tolerates sin and violation. And therefore, no Avera can eradicate Torah because it comes from a level that tolerates and carries Averas. Not the Avera behavior, but despite the Avera. And this is what is indicated in when it says, we guard the mitzvahs and we listen to the voice, and that's the characteristic of Torah. Because the sound, the voice of Torah is the drawing down from above to below, so too Torah, which is drawn from above, from such a lofty place through the authors of the Mishnah and the Gemara, the Tanaim and the Amoraim, the Mari Masnis and the Gemara, that this should be the halacha that comes from Shammai or Hillel, that this is Mamash the Dvar Hashem itself, like we say, the words, my words, which I place in your mouth, my words, Hashem's words, Mamish, and this is what it means, my voice, Mamish, Hashem's voice we listen to, because whoever sits and studies Torah, Hashem sits and studies with him. So you have to listen. Just like we say, listen to the ear, listen to what comes from it. That is you, your very essence, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, that we absorb Torah and we manifest it in some sort of personal sense. And then the pasuk says, and him you shall serve, meaning Tavedu, that it should be an Evet. Like it says, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. Similarly, you have to have these two levels, the level of Bet and the level of Evet. The level of ben is an av and a simcha, that you should progress from level to level. The level of eved is to serve Hashem like an eved who serves his master. It doesn't just mean that he serves him to fulfill his instruction, even if he doesn't really have any geschmack in it and doesn't even understand what he's doing. But it means that he should have a geschmack in the avodah itself, and he does it with a complete heart because he accepts upon himself the instruction of his boss to serve him with all of his capacity. Similarly, a person has to accept upon himself the Malchus Shamayim and to fulfill the mitzvahs of Hashem, because this is the will of God. Even though mitzvahs, yes, they require a kavanah, and the kavanah is the simcha that comes in the Avos Hashem, kamayim apanim, because they draw down the Ratzon Elyon Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvaysav, makes us holy in his mitzvahs. Nevertheless, it has to be the level of avodah. There has to be labor. That even though this avodah comes from a very external level of the soul, the simcha and the avos Hashem, nevertheless, there is another maila that he has total bittul and total subservience. Like it's explained that this is what Shmuel rebuked Shaul when he said to him, "Is not obedience more precious than sacrifice?" When Shmuel did spare the cattle of Amalek and claimed that he was going to bring it as a carbon, and Shmuel said to him, "Do what you're told." Now, through this, that a person becomes attached to Hashem. That is the plural, because within the nefesh we have nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the three aspects of the soul that are embedded within our human experience, which are our contemplative thoughts, our spoken words, and our deeds. And our deeds are like an eved. We do what we're told. Like a person has to align his thoughts, his words with Hashem, and align his thoughts with Hashem. Now, the way in which we align our thoughts with Hashem is by attaching ourselves and our enthusiasm in godliness. The act is the least and the most external aspect of our existence, to be elevated and connected with Hashem. And this is the level of the eved, which is when we do what we're told. Even if a person doesn't have any understanding of why this is important, he just follows the rules. He does what he's instructed to do. This is his avodah, to do the service like a simple servant. And through this, he becomes attached with Hashem. And it says, Ubaytidbakun, with an additional letter, nun. It could have just said that Ubaytidbaku, that he is attached. This final elongated vertical nun suggests that there is a long stretch out, that it's drawn all the way down, to allude to this idea that it is drawn from the most intense level of godliness down here into this world, to the point that it is completely aligned with Hashem, and there will be no opportunity for the Sitra Achra to steal from it. Like it says, the spirit of impurity I will lift from the land. Now we have like a summary of this mimer. One, it says, Ki menas Hashem, Hashem will test you. And we talked about the objective of tests is for the person to overcome the test, and thus to be elevated up to a level of knowing. And as we say, if there's no bina, there's no das, that through contemplation, this expands our comprehension. So we think about the bria of Yesh Miyayin, the source of all of creation, the level of expression and radiance, which is Ka'ayin. It's called just the name, the calling point. And this is what it means when it says Ki imcha makar chayim. And it's called the back of Hashem, the Acharayim. And from here, it's drawn down that we should pursue it. We should continuously progress from level to level. This is the Rutzoi. This is what we run after. The drawing down, that is to even the back of Hashem. Then it says, him you shall fear. And this is the idea that we have to now come back. We've pursued Rutzoi. Now there has to be a shuv, that this comes from him himself, that pronoun, because of the infinity of Hashem. And this is experienced in Nishman Esrei. Then there is, of course, the external expression of Yira, like we describe in the brachas leading up to the Shema, that we see how all the angels are in awe of Hashem, which rubs off on us. And then we come to the Kriya Shema, where we declare the Ava of Hashem, that we fear Hashem himself, not just because we see the angels for whom we have reverence, having reverence for Hashem, which provokes us to have reverence for those for whom we revere. Then we say Vitzmaisav, his mitzvahs, that through the mitzvahs, which are the will of Hashem, it arouses the will within the person. This is the Ner mitzvah. The Ner mitzvah requires guarding. We have to prevent the Averos from squashing it. And how do we do that? By listening to his voice, which is Torah. Torah is light, the source of Torah, the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim. And therefore, the Yud Gimel Midas that Torah is analyzed through. And again, because Torah precedes the world, so it's not vulnerable to being squashed by the world. And this is what we then say, him you shall serve. That it should be like an Eved, no reason. You just do what you're told. And this is what Shmuel said to Shul, is not obedience more precious than sacrifice? And through this, we become attached with Hashem, an attachment that goes from the contemplative to the verbal to the behavioral. Now there's a further explanation. We're on Amud Gimel. We say that after Hashem, your God, you should pursue. That Hishtalshalis should be drawn out from the level of Malchus, which is called the Achrei, the back, just like it's the point of contact. This level that is just a slight glimpse and insight. And this is similar to the way it's reached to the highest levels. It's the Kav that is drawn down through the Tzimtzum. And from this otherwise empty space where there's that disconnect between the infinite and the beginning of the finite, which is all the way down to the Malchus level, which is where it's expressed. And here we can understand the three times that we say Kadosh in the davening, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Similar to what the Arizal writes, that the idea of Kadosh means detached, that it's incomparable the way that the neshama impacts the body, which it is invested in the body, which is not the case with Hashem and the world. So the mashal of the impact of the neshama on the body falters when we try to translate that into Hashem's relationship with the world. So why do we say Kadosh three times when we're describing the detachment of Hashem? The point being, it's explained in so many other places that when we say Yahalu Hashem ki hu tziva v'nivro, praise Hashem, for when He instructed, it was created. What does it mean? Ki hu, He, that is the atzmus umahus. He instructed and it was created. Then you can't say by Hashem that He even bara created, which would suggest, we're now on Madalu, which suggests that it was sort of consequential, because that would again suggest that there's Hashem and He created something that's somewhat outside of Him. And that doesn't work, except that you're talking about, again, the shemus of Hashem, where we're trying to put some sort of parameter on godliness, like we say, Bereshis bara Elokim. But Yahalu Hashem, we praise the name, only the name, that's not to the essence. Because the Eibush in His essence, He just commands it and it happens. It's effortless. And therefore the term bara, which is again suggesting somewhat of an effort, suggests that there's a creation, yesh mi'ayin. And this requires understanding that since we say bara, that it's consequential, but again, suggesting that there's an actor and an act, how is this called yesh mi'ayin? There seems to be somewhat of an effort. However, now we explain, like it says in the Igeres HaKodesh, in the letter that begins, He and His life force and that which He causes are all one, that the kalim of the 10 Sfiras of Atzilis that are called Gamuhi, these are Elokus that they create yesh mi'ayin, like the Ein Sof, and they're not the Hishtalshalis of Ilav Olol, because through the Seder Hishtalshalis, even the Tzimtzumim cannot be raised up to or impact or be effective to create Gashmis from Ruchnius. That's why it's called yesh mi'ayin. And this is what it's written even in the philosophy, that the creation of Gashmis from Ruchnius, there's no greater yesh mi'ayin than that. Because no matter how much you will be compressing of infinite, you're never going to get finite. It's exclusively in the hands of the Eibush. And the capacity for this is nested in the Kalim of Atzilis. That's where the Kav, the extension from the Or Ein Sof comes. And again, the light is going to reflect the origin and is going to be unified with them. Like we say, He and what He causes are one. And through this, He creates yesh mi'ayin. Now, in MS, this creation of spiritual matters, of Bri, Yitzir, Nasiya, that come from the Kelim Vatzilis, is a form of yesh mi'ayin. It's not a procedural that has a cause-effect. It's not a shtalshalis. Now, from the perspective of the expression of the Kav that's invested within the Kelim of Atzilis, you could call that creation. But again, it's a consequential. It's a radiance from the Kelim. Even the ha'ara of the Kav that's invested within the creations to give them existence, like it's explained there in Tanya. And this is what it says at the beginning of Sharicha V'Amunah, what the Alter Rebbe here refers to as Sefer Shal Beinanim, but it's in Chelik Beis, that even in the inanimate, even in the domain, you have the words of Hashem of creation. There the Alter Rebbe talks about how the even, a stone, which doesn't even reflect any evident godliness, is created by Hashem. This is the power that is invested within it, the koach hapoel in the nifal. Nevertheless, this creation in the nifal, like of the stone, comes from the power of that is invested within it, which is the configuration of the letters of Hashem that are invested within it. And this is mamash yesh miyayin, because the oisius are a koach of elokus that should be created a physical stone, and this is mamash from nothing, mamash yesh miyayin. And this is again through a hishtalshalis that is possible once the koach haruchni is detached from the infinity of Hashem and it's brought into the physical world. It's now just a matter of reconfiguring it until you get down to all the different items, even a stone. And this is why Kadosh emphasizes the idea of separateness, that even though there is the koach hapoel in the nifal, nevertheless, it is only a ha'ari, only can get a glimpse of it. It doesn't touch on the kav that is within the 10 spheres of Atzilus. It's only like the ray of the sunlight and compared to the sun itself, like it says there in the Igeres HaKodesh. And even more beyond that, the power of impact that comes from the 10 statements, the original 10 statements, which are nested again in Atzilus, that is invested within the consequence, the Nifal, which are Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah, is not at all comparable to a neshama, the way it's invested in the body, because it is not the root of it in the body itself, and the atzmis of the neshama, whereas the power of Hashem that it's in the affected is what creates this impact, miyayin liyash, and therefore the nifal is totally batal to the poyel, to the power that causes it, and it is even more profoundly detached than the guf is from the neshama.